The weather in 2025. They are certainly there already. But in that document, what it calls weather manipulation, climate engineering, weather warfare, as a force multiplier, that you can bring populations of countries to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. You can destabilize those governments by the same means. And there is absolutely no question this is going on because we can see their operations on satellite imagery. And let's, as far as the
I don't get that. Why would you need to see it on satellite imagery when you can see it right in front of your fucking eyes? Go over to Michael Oziak channel, and I know there's thousands of other channels, but I don't know who in those thousands of other channels are real people. I'm a real person. Go to the Michael Oziak channel. I think there's still 1,400 videos up over there, all showing you exactly what you guys are talking about. We can see it with our own eyes. You don't need a fucking fake ass satellite fucking video, all right? Fucking maybe for the upper atmosphere, but even that, on a clear day, you can watch the upper atmosphere shit happen. It's gonna look tinier. The planes are tinier little dots, but you can see them.
The so-called forecasters, let's just put that into context. For example, in Northern California, we have our local forecasters, which are simply weather manipulation script readers. They know sometimes 6, 7 days in advance if a particular day will be what they call now mostly sunny. And on that day, when they use that term, it's typically there's not a natural cloud anywhere in the sky, but there is jet sprayed haze, and that's exactly what it is because we have time lapse footage. You can see this spreading out, covering the entire horizon, blotting out the sun. How could that so-called weather forecaster know that 7 days in advance unless they're reading a script? And we know they're reading scripts because Raytheon, private defense contractor Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin do all the weather modeling for the nation's weathermen, the agencies that are under a federal gag order that I just mentioned. And that script goes all the way down to the local meteorologist. They're literally reading scripts.
Heavens, this is so scary. I'm so pleased to have been able to talk to you about this, Dane. You're saying the solution really is ground up, from the ground, getting people to be aware of this, to talk and share it, to go to your site, geoengineeringwatch.org, to do as much research as possible. But
At least he doesn't call it
persuade
chemtrails,
people.
at least.
I made a video a month or two ago called Don't Build the Prison, and that was about people putting in the 5G, or we have cameras that are going to do the biometrics, and the people who are doing the work for the dastardly, nasty people don't necessarily know they're doing the work, or they're a small element of it.
So do you see, I'm giving you the next bigger picture. It's not about the trails themselves, is what I'm trying to explain to you. Yes, the trails are important, the fact that humans are doing that, but this guy's talking about going after,
cameras and this 5G, you know, make sure you add in
I'll let him talk.
thing where you can nobble it when the time comes. Because these people are basically building the prison, and once they realise that's what they're doing, or in this instance, they're all contributing to poisoning the air and causing the bad weather and bringing us down to our knees. If we're able to persuade those that what they are doing is an element of that, they are likely to stop. And if enough of them stop, it stops.
Nope. It's already too far gone.
The key aspect, if we can get this out into the open, I would argue at that point we have the proverbial pitchforks and torches time when the population takes to the streets looking for anyone and everyone involved with the programs and their cover-up to hold them legally and morally accountable.
Well, then that means I've got about 10,000 family and friends then that I've all shared this with over the last 15, 20 years of my life, that I've pointed up in the sky, had arguments, and I'm not the only one. I know there's thousands of others out there, but each one of them, you're talking about one out of every 10,000 people, right? So you get one out of every 10,000 people. That's an easy number to come up with. That's not a false statistic. That's a reality. So 1 in 10,000 people even are willing to look over the years, right? So what are you gonna come out on all them? I gotta call my parents and say, Mom, Dad, look, all that shit I fucking said all these years, you were part of it. You're part of the fucking lie, you know? I was telling you and you told me I was nuts and I shouldn't worry about it and it's just a plane leaving the airport and Those are condensation trails you told me. I mean, really, think about it. What are you gonna fucking do? So you're gonna, who are you gonna go for, right?
In regard to our so-called elected officials, they are bought, sold, and paid for. I've had personal meetings at the Capitol of California with Governor Newsom, his top aide, and they absolutely could not dispute these programs were in existence, but they have said exactly nothing, nor will they,
Nope.
because that's part of their servitude to those in power. And the gravity of this issue, again, it cannot be overstated. It is
because they got 7.8 billion zombie slaves that are all counting on the lie machine. They're counting on their actors and their actresses, their musicians, their politicians. They're all the same. They're scientists, they're teachers, their parents, their grandparents, their family, friends. They're counting on all of them to distract them as much as possible so they don't have to see reality. So when you go to try to take that away from everybody and show them the reality, they're going to be very upset. Most of them are not going to want to know the truth. They don't want reality. They don't. I don't know what to do about that yet.
Is not just destroying in the near term the planet's life support systems, soils, waters. It's contaminating every single breath we take, and our systems are already overburdened with toxins. And there's many sources. I'm not blaming everything on climate engineering. I want to make that clear. We've been horrible stewards of the planet. There's no question about that. We have trashed the planet. But the intentional disruption of the planet's life support systems being the most egregious of all. And mathematically and statistically, if we don't deal with this, again, we're done. And if you look at things like the destruction of the ozone layer, for example, that by itself being an extinction level event, we have recently gotten peer-reviewed study of, for example, plankton populations from the Atlantic. Crashed, 90% decline. UV radiation is the single biggest factor, aside from all the pollution, the plastics, everything else. UV is killing plankton as they try to photosynthesize in the upper layers of the water column. They're being.
It's not actually the UV though. It's the type of UV that's coming through. It's like going from, when you think about your growing light in your growing room, if you change from some heavy metals and minerals in certain bulbs, and then go over to now everyone's going over to LEDs, right? So LEDs are not really the normal, what people would think of as a light bulb when you really look at how it works. But the light that it throws off also is a big difference in the way that it works. That's what they're turning this into. That's what they're turning our system into. And it's easy for them to do when everyone thinks that they're on a spinning web pararocket ball spinning at 1100 miles an hour, flying tens of thousands of miles through the vast of outer space at millions of miles an hour, and then all this crazy shit, and the whole heliocentric model is made to confuse and distort, just like all the religions were. All of them, all the religions. Sorry, everyone, that's just the way it is. Reality's here, and reality's better than any of the religions that we were ever fed. We can see it all for ourselves.
Fried, literally, just like insects are as well. So we take even one aspect of that as an extinction level event. Now let's add everything else on top of that. Again, this is a fight for life.
So there's 5
if
jets right here,
with it,
going all different ways.
We are at the end of the road. But if we can expose
in
it,
this one
we
area
alter
right
the entire paradigm. And every one of us can play a part in that. Any one of us could be the final, as I state in the end of the film, The Dimming, any one of us could be the final pebble that triggers the landslide of awakening. And if we can do that, it would be the most quantum leap we can make in the right direction.
The Dimming is your documentary. It's available on your website. People can go and see that, as you said, for free. People could go and visit geoengineeringwatch.org to find out more. Dane, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for making time to talk to the viewers and myself. And I hope the viewers watching...
with all the years looking and stuff like that, it's amazing, though, that these guys don't see the true creator's work anywhere. It's kind of like the artists. When I see the artists that are painting the moon, I did some videos under the Harold Cott series about that. And as I'm watching them do their artwork in the moon, and I'm thinking, wow, they really don't see it. They don't fucking see it. I don't understand how an artist can't look at a photograph of the moon sitting on their table they're turning it in all different directions and everything, because it's all about angles and distances of perspective, you know, so. And I think to myself, wow, but then again, I missed it all my life too, so who the fuck am I? Alright, I'm gonna look this up. Let's see if she even still has the channel. Let's see. Yeah. This is her channel. She's still up. She's a nice lady. She looks like she got younger, unless she's using an old picture. Israel News Live. Oh, she's got Harold Kotz on her channel too. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what I want to listen to. Let's see. I don't know if she's an agent or not. I don't know. I can never figure it out. She should have come to Harold Kotz's series by now. By this time, I would think.
This is Deborah Tavares with
That's her name.
StopTheCrime.net.
Deborah
And the
Tavares.
talk today is about global water wars and also the water wars that we're experiencing here in the United States. We're going to be talking about specific
She's got a
attempts here in
huge
Northern
picture of a globe
California
behind her.
to privatize the water and reduce our water availability by the engineered drought that we're facing, that has been engineered.
So now she pissed me off. I don't even want to listen
The
to
name
her
of the
now.
talk is
Just 'cause
USA
she got a
Inc.
glow behind her. I'm
Stealing
tired of
water
it.
for profits and power, creating water markets
No, thank you.
from a natural energy resource. The wars of the 21st century will be fought over water rather than oil, as in the past. This is in memory of Dr. Stan Monteith, who hosted Radio Liberty for over 20 years. And he always begun his radio program with this quote: bringing you the story behind the story, the news behind the news, hoping to convince you that reality is usually scoffed at and illusion is usually king. But in the battle for the survival of Western civilization, it will be reality and not illusion or delusion that will determine what the future will bring. And Dr. Stan passed away September 29th of 2014. I also have a quote from former FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. Quote, the individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to the realization of the evil which has been introduced into our midst. It rejects even the assumption that human creatures could espouse a philosophy which must ultimately destroy all that is good and decent. Again, this is J. Edgar Hoover, former director of the FBI, and this was a quote that came out of the Elks magazine in August of 1956. The presentation today about water wars will demonstrate and expose with documents the plans that intend to create greater enslavement by weaponizing water. And that's only if we consent. The topics that we'll cover: why do politicians, policies, and governments make no sense? Covert documents never intended to be released for publication will be discussed, and we will reveal the truth behind the reality of available primary water created by Earth's energy, and it is a renewable. This is very good news. This is one of the best pieces of good news that I've been able to share in a very long time. We'll also be talking about documents that will reveal and expose the newest strategy for driving public water resources into private hands of the World Bank and other corporate players. And the conclusion is going to be about sharing this information and the resource material here with everyone you know, and download Lawfully Yours. This is a people's empowerment guide to our corporate commercial legal system. You can download Lawfully Yours from the top of stopthecrime.net. It is a compilation of ex-federal judges on how our system really works and how we can not consent lawfully. A reminder of some other quotes that were given to us as warnings throughout history, and certainly many of you remember. This is just a partial quote from John F. Kennedy. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. The high office of president has been used to foment a plot to destroy American freedom, and before I leave office, I must inform the citizens of this plight. These are two warnings combined together, and I would encourage you to pay attention to those words of warning. Also, from
Feline Canine Road and Ape, Human and Beast, over and over and over again. Triangular builders.
Quote, all science is merely a means to an end. The means is knowledge.
Can't do it.
Welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me in another of my interviews. Today, by popular demand, ladies and gentlemen, I bring back Sir, it sounds like I'm bringing back from somewhere, I don't know where, Sir Julian Rose. It's wonderful to have you, Julian. Here he is, organic farmer, for those who don't know, and founder of the Hardwick Estate for Real Ecology. And today, we're going to look at, well, nothing less than real food, real life, none of those GMOs, and nor robots. We don't want any of that. It's getting back to a real sense of purpose and living, and taking back control of our lives in many ways.
Exactly.
Hello, Julian. How are you?
I'm very well, Richard, and I'm delighted to be back again.
Well, it is lovely. Yeah, no, it's lovely to have you back.
Thank you, and I very much enjoyed the last time, and I very much appreciated the wisdom and common sense of your audience, which is quite rare. So I feel very honoured to be back again.
Well, it's not. It's. I don't know what it is about the audience, why they have found their way to me particularly, but it's fascinating reading the comments and seeing just how much they know, how educated they are, and how delightful and how earthy in many ways, and you know, which is great.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that really helps to spread the message to other people, because you know, part of the job, I think, is almost sending those people who understand to talk to those people who perhaps have not seen the videos and can introduce these sort of subjects to their friends. So they're
right.
doing fantastic work.
The word of mouth is the old way and the best.
Yes, totally agree.
Yeah.
So I know that in the past we were talking about organic farming. We were talking about the how food is very important. Non-mucked about with food. This is what you've been doing for a long time, and the whole business of building local and communities.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Actually, what I'm going to talk about today is put this whole issue into a setting which has become critical, because we have very little time to get our act together in the face of the threats being pushed on us by the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the European Union, and every mega institute on the planet is following the same agenda.
Mm.
That agenda is extremely negative, and the only way we can counteract it is by taking control of our destinies. Now, a man who did take control of his destiny and made a major impact on the British Isles back in 1381 was a gentleman called Wat Tyler, and he led something called the Peasants' Revolt. And what he said, a very famous quote, is this: England should be a nation of self-governing communities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is my recommendation for this moment in history around 700 years later. We've been waiting a long time for this to happen. And unfortunately, waiting is perhaps a problematical word. It's mostly our passivity which has allowed us to keep taking the message from the top instead of taking control from the bottom. And now, I think we have to take very, very seriously this very powerful statement of Wat Tyler when he was leading the Peasants' Revolt, which incidentally, for people that don't remember their history or perhaps never studied that particular period of time, he did very nearly oust the regime of that era. He only by an act of treachery, while he was negotiating with King John for a better deal for the peasants, he was murdered. Right there with a huge crowd of people in the centre of London.
In Smithfield, wasn't it? In Smithfield.
Yes, in Smithfield, exactly, yep. And he had raised a real army of peasants. You know, they were equipped with pitchforks and anything you could hit anyone over the head with, and anything they could find in their farmyard, which could be used as a weapon. And they did rise up because they were being forced into a situation which was totally impossible from the point of view of survival by the barons and by the people who basically were put in charge of taxation, put in charge of managing people. You could even say they were the technocrats of that era. And this was particularly the people the peasants rose up against. And of course, it always came from the top. And so they had to go for London and go for the king and try and make him aware that the vital importance of the peasantry to the land in England. Now, the peasantry had a rough deal, actually, because they were forced off the land over subsequent centuries by the Enclosures Acts, which basically gradually changed Great Britain into a country of farms surrounded by fences and hedges, whereas it had been much more open-ended before. And most of the food had been grown based on village life and small town life, and something called the strip farm system, where the land that you farmed came out from the village in strips. And you simply went out there, grew your food, milked your cows there, brought your produce back to your house, and your neighbours cooperated with you because it was in everybody's interest to cooperate. And that farming system is perhaps not perfect from the point of view of its management of the soil and the lack of formal rotations, which came in later. But from the perspective of maintaining the livelihood of local populations, it was second to none. And it still is practiced in certain parts of the world.
I think there's a village, I forget what it's called now, but I think there's a village up north who still have that principle, and you can go and have a look at it. And of course,
Yes.
the countryside, if you look at those 1960s black and white pictures, you can see in the landscape
That's right.
at that time the scars of that, I say scars, but
That's right.
it's effectively what it is, but that wonderful type of farming, it is so fascinating to see. And,
Isn't it?
And
Isn't
it went on for not decades, but centuries.
It went on for centuries.
Yes.
So basically, what I'm trying to get across now, I think, is that we need to return very fast, within the next 5 to 10 years, to a self-governing community approach in the country, and that has to be created by us. Essentially, we have to turn away from centralized power via Parliament. We have to turn away from centralized power based on corporations. We have to turn away from our phony democracy altogether. It's failed us, 100%. And we have to start our own game on our own terms, on our own pitch. Now, if leadership is needed, and it usually is, it must be by the wise, a council of the wise. Only, in my view, communities can spot the wise and see who is the responsible one in their midst. You can't do this via TV sets and national stages. You know, you can only tell within a community when you're close up the difference between ego and sincerity.
Yes, definitely.
So this is the new, this is what's coming. This is the new society. The fact that it happens to hark back 700 years only goes to show how slow the evolutionary process has been, especially from the bottom-up perspective. Now, the way of doing things, which we're currently living with and have been living with for quite a while now, is basically a form of theatre. You know, there's nothing real happening up there. It's a very low level of theatre. And I think almost all of us have worked out now that this, based on lying, actually, you know, the art of lying is essential if you're going to be a politician these days. And the one that doesn't is alone, standing there in the Houses of Parliament, and all the rest leave the room because he's about to speak.
As we have seen. Yes, as we've seen.
Yes. So we must now take this very seriously and say, right, we're going to take control of our destiny. Now, the number one imperative to taking control of one's destiny comes from the procurement of life's essentials. That is the number one necessity, and basically, food is the first on the list. So, we need, I think, to say to ourselves, now is the time to put that at the top of the list of what's the most important thing to do in our lives. How to procure a diet which is real, which is not fake, which is not synthetic, and how to work with other people in a cooperative spirit to ensure that we can have access to land, to enough at least assets to be able to create small-scale units, small holdings, cooperatives, whatever, you name it. Now, Klaus Schwab and King Charles they want us, to eat synthetic foods and insects. But we don't.
No way.
Precisely.
I mean, you know, even the idea of it is repulsive.
Utterly repulsive. So, but you have to wake up to the fact that the opportunities we have for avoiding this may be limited. Because quite recently, an act was passed by our House of Parliament, which received royal assent from Prince Charles. Actually, he was Prince Charles when he gave it royal assent. No, he wasn't. I think he was already king. Excuse me, I'm wrong about that. It was March the 23rd, so he was already king. And it's called the Genetic Technology Precision Breeding Act 2023. And it was given the royal go-ahead by King Charles III, giving it his royal assent. Now, King Charles, when he was Prince Charles, had a reputation for being a strong supporter of environmental causes, and indeed organic farming, and indeed proper food, and a good way of life. So the fact that he gave his royal assent to a bill which is going to create a genetic technology precision breeding program, which is essentially GMO taken one step further, something called CRISP, it's gene editing actually. And the plan is to be able to gene edit plants and animals to be able to carry almost any form of extra element that someone like Klaus Schwab might consider appropriate. Now, I'll give you a shocking example. mRNA vaccines are likely to be included in these new novel foods. So you would be eating a food which contained a vaccine. And here comes the second shocker. There is going to be no labeling. It has been considered that this is no different from ordinary food. There is no need to create special labeling for it.
Good.
And that is what has been passed into law on the 23rd of March.
I mean, it's beyond belief that a man who holds such responsibility as he does for his people in this country and all the rest of the Commonwealth could conceivably consider, I mean, unless he lost his mind over the period that he was studying this act, it just beggars belief.
Yes, it does beggar belief. And the point about it, I think, is this. We see what happens when people wish to retain power. The club, actually it's even called the firm within royal circles, which royalty represents, is a hugely wealthy organization. It's a common corporation, actually. It's not just a nice family with a lot of money, following some old rituals from the past, which we all find rather enjoyable. It's actually a corporation with an agenda. And unfortunately, while the agenda might have been something pro-human a while back, and I think you have to go quite a long way back, actually. Certainly beyond the Queen, further back than her, was already out of control once she was in power. The agenda is the same agenda as the globalist agenda now. And I think the reason why it's happened this way is because the need, or at least the belief of people in power within royalty, is that they must hold on to that empire at all costs. And in order to do that, you really have to be, so to speak, working shoulder to shoulder with the biggest organizations on the planet, which are the ones associated with globalization and are made up of all the leading corporations of the planet and all the major banking organizations of the planet. Now, if you do that, you're then in the territory. Excuse me, I think I'm
It's
going
all right. Yeah, time is moving.
yes, you're going into territory which is essentially the New World Order. And you can't compromise under the situation. Although what the king has tried to do was to have one foot in each camp. He tried to say, well, I very much appreciate and want to support organic farming and environmental issues. And he wants the image that the public is seeing to be that image. But the other image, which has gone out willy-nilly, because he opened the recent Davos forum for the WEF only a year ago with a speech announcing that we have to follow the edicts of the Green New Deal, of the Great Reset, of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He actually was there, he was the first person to really notice it. So he's compromised 100%. It's the position of complete hypocrisy. I'm personally not going to bring in what I feel about the individual. I'm saying this: one cannot represent one's people and take a coronation oath, which he will be in 3 weeks' time, saying that he will protect the integrity of the people and the sovereignty of his nation, while at the same time standing shoulder to shoulder with Klaus Schwab and an organization which is interested in dismantling the nation state completely. And not only dismantling the nation state, of altering everything which we take as a positive tradition. And since we're discussing food, you can take that as a very central issue indeed, because actually the plan under the Green New Deal is to indeed make most food synthetic. So it will be
It's gonna be a little boring here for a couple
which are
minutes.
grown in laboratories, which will become factories, and they will range through almost every product, particularly meat and dairy products. And then the vegetables will be grown in huge hydroponic factories where they drip water with chemicals in it into large vats, and all the plants grow out of that. There's no soil involved at all. Now this is all spelled out. If anyone wants to research it, it's all in the public domain, this information. You can find it if you look on the WEF website, for example, or in Klaus Schwab's book. It's all spelled out. So we have no reason to be surprised. You know, we ought to know this by now. So food is going to be taken over under these conditions, because the theory is if you're going to save the planet from global warming, you must cease having any livestock on the land. You must, they fart and they burp, and those two things are extremely bad news, apparently, and are going to cause the entire world to get hot very quickly, and we're all going to get fried. So cows are going to have to wear masks if they exist. And actually, yes, this is really true, and King Charles awarded a special prize to a young man who invented one at a recent technology
Oh my goodness.
forum. And there was pictures of it, actually, even in the Daily Mail. A cow wearing a mask, very much like COVID one, but rather more elaborate, to prevent methane coming out of its mouth and going into the upper atmosphere and causing global warming. Now, you can only be deeply cynical when you hear this stuff. This is a sort of, you can hear people laughing in the background, that people would agree to go along with anything. You can hear them laughing, you know, because it's absurd that anyone would agree to such nonsense as this. Aside from the fact, and we won't get into this because it's too big a subject, the global warming issue itself is a scam, and it was invented already at the Club of Rome in 1972 as a way of controlling people, of keeping them frightened, and making them feel that something terrible is going to happen to the planet. And it was devised by the very same people who are leading the show now, by the corporatists, the people who have the power and want to retain the power, and not only contain but increase their power base. And the warming of the upper atmosphere is a tiny event by comparison to all the other things that are going on that really matter on this planet, that are far more devastating than this minuscule level of warming, which has incidentally stopped since 2016. There is no, it's admitted now even in top scientific circles, there is no acceleration of warming process. In fact, there's a cooling tendency. And some people believe, some scientists believe, and there's credibility in this, that we're actually possibly moving towards something more like an ice age, a second mini ice age. And that would partly be because the way the world works, the world is a living being. She's called Gaia in some circles. She's a living being, just like you and I are living beings, all of nature is a living being, and she tries to adapt herself to counteract changes. So say there's a warming change, well, she would try and counteract it a little bit to bring us something cool. Yeah. So, you know, she has a fever, our planet. Has a fever, and it's not surprising, because she's had every sort of toxin thrown at her, and she has a fever. So what I was going to try and bring into the conversation was this, because most people always come up with a very real question. How are we going to do this job of procuring our food? Let's stick with food. And I've got a thought about this. And I've written about it in one of my books. And I've written quite a few essays about it too in the past. And it has never gone away. In fact, it's coming back even stronger. What I think we're going to have to do is contract farmers to grow our food for us. Now, when I say farmers, I'm talking about small and medium-sized farmers, still working in